welcome to episode 132 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all of the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So, it's September.
Yay.
Well, it's almost spooky season. That's good.
I do love spooky season.
So this month, obviously, we're doing a new book. We're doing Kingdom of the Cursed by Kerri Maniscalco. She actually has a new book coming out in the same universe, I guess. Throne of Secrets. So it's the second book in the Throne of the Fallen series, and it's coming out in October. And I'm pretty sure that series is an actual adult series from the start.
Okay.
But it is set in the same world, and I think we kind of talked about it last time. It might have to do with like some of the other sins that we don't get as much of in this trilogy. Yes,
I believe that's the case.
But I will say I haven't read this book.
Me neither. I have actually Throne of the Fallen, which is the first of this series. Mm-hmm. I have it on my shelf downstairs. It's beautiful to look at.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's really pretty. So yeah, I have it, and I just haven't gotten to it yet. So maybe I'll see if I can get to it when we're done this book.
Yeah. I actually haven't read the book we're reading now yet. Other than, like, obviously, I've read the first week because I'm here.
Yeah.
But I haven't read this book or the third book. You've read both.
I have. I know how the series ends, yes. I really liked the way the last book ended, Kingdom of the Wicked. So I went ahead and I read both books. And this one also leaves off on a really impressive, like a really impressive way. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to know, because they dance around a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And they make a lot of innuendos and a lot of like there's a lot of mysteries on the go.
Yeah.
Like, who's actually behind this? What is this person's story? Mm-hmm. Why is this person like that? So I find that really hard to resist.
Yeah.
So we read the first book as part of another month. Mm-hmm. So when we got the opportunity, we were like, well, what do we want to do for September? I really wanted to get this book going because I really want you to be as, like, into it as I was. Like, I really could not stop reading it, I guess.
Yeah. And, like, I listened to Kingdom of the Wicked when it first came out, and then this book came out, and I got it on Libby as well, and started listening to it, and I couldn't remember enough about the first book, so I was like, I can't get into this one, because I just forgot everything. And then I just didn't... I tried to listen to it again after we finished it. I just think I don't love the beginning of this book. Like, I think I just was like, why? Maybe we'll get into it a bit more. But I think I only gave it, like, a chapter each time. I was just like, nah, I'm not enjoying this traveling bullshit. And I just gave up. And, like, it almost immediately goes past that if I had just given it a little longer. But I just didn't.
Yeah. So for those of you that maybe have not listened to our Kingdom of the Wicked episodes, just for your reference, they are episodes 110 through 113. So 110, 111, 112, 113. So go check those out if you want to. If you are here, yeah. So yeah. I will say that, like, I think the writing can be challenging with this book sometimes. But for me, it didn't take away that much from the storyline.
Yeah.
And all the, like, the truths that get dropped, and you're like, oh my god! Like, and when you finally figure out everything.
Yeah.
It's so like, oh yeah, it's just good.
Yeah, because there's so many hints, and I'm like, I can't put any of this shit together. Like, what is happening?
But it's actually really funny. So when I was doing up the notes for my section, there were actually not a lot, but a few little tidbits in there that were like, it was like foreshadowing what's to come.
Oh, okay.
But it was so, like, such a passing comment.
Yeah.
That if I put it in, it'd be weird. So I didn't. But, like, I wanted to. But it is really funny how, like, different you read it once you know the ending.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So, anyway. I'm excited for us to go on this journey.
Me too. I'm liking it so far. Like, I'm glad I pushed through the part that apparently I don't like, because now it's like getting into some good stuff.
Yeah. So in saying that, we're just going to get right into it, because why the heck not? Yeah. Just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone and things might get saucy. They might. It could happen. So, we are reading, again, Kingdom of the Cursed, which is the second book in the Kingdom of the Wicked series. I guess it's just called that.
I hope so. I don't really know.
By Kerri Maniscalco. So, this is week 1, and we are reading chapters 1 to 7. Unlike when we read, like, our tandem read last month, and we were reading, like, 20 chapters a week. It's only 7.
Yeah.
It's only 7 this time.
Not so bad.
So much more manageable.
Exactly.
So we start off right away. Like, I feel like there was a lot of, like, build up. Because, like, first, there's a quote from Dante's Inferno.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something about, like, taking them to the other shore into eternal darkness. I think it's, like, just referencing the descent into hell.
Yeah, makes sense.
And as we may or may not remember, Kingdom of the Wicked, so, like, for a little refresher, Emilia is a witch, and she lives with her family in Italy, and her twin sister is murdered, and Emilia finds a spell. And so she uses it to summon one of the 7 deadly sins. So they're all like manifestation, they're demons, princes of hell. So she uses this spell to summon the demon Prince Wrath. So he is the prince of the sin Wrath.
Mm-hmm.
And Wrath informs her that there is a curse in hell, and essentially the king of hell needs to take a wife, and her sister agreed to do it, but then was murdered, and all of these women, witches that are agreeing to be the queen of hell, they're being murdered, and they need to figure out who's murdering witches. And anyway, long story short, there's obviously sexual tension between the two of them. There are feelings on either side. But then Emilia feels betrayed by something Wrath does. And she realizes that she needs to actually go to hell to figure out who is actually behind her sister's murder. Like, she knows that somebody planned it all, and she's pissed about it and wants to go figure it out. So she agrees to be the new queen of hell, and the book Kingdom of the Wicked ends with Wrath, like, escorting her, like, through the portal into hell.
Yeah.
So, that's the backstory. I'm leaving a lot out, but
there's like mysteries and twists and a bad guy and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, first starting off, we get that quote from Dante's Inferno about the descent into hell. Because that's what Emilia is currently doing. She's making the descent into hell. Then we get another page with notes from the secret DeCarlo grimoire. So
secret?
Yes, DeCarlo is Emilia's last name. The grimoire was up in the air, like it was there, and then it had disappeared and had a bunch of stuff in it that Emilia wanted. And essentially it said that one summer night, twins were born, and it was considered an omen. So there's an assumption here that we assume that it's talking about Emilia and her twin Vittoria. It said one would forfeit her mortal life, and the other would sell her soul. So again, we have reference, I guess, Vittoria forfeited her mortal life and died, and the other would sell her soul. So that's Emilia. She has sold her soul to the devil now.
Yeah.
To become his queen. And then we also get that the elders of the witch community, I guess, all agreed that the twins' birth marked the start of the dark days. Whatever that is. But now that one turned to fury and eyed the devil's throne and the other lay heartless, there were some whispers of a new prophecy that taunted both witches and demons. So, in other words, like, they're saying now the prophecy continues and said that one of the twins turned to fury. So, again, that's Emilia, because she is real mad that her sister is dead. And eyed the devil's throne, so is looking at getting on the throne. And the other lay heartless. So, again, Vittoria had her heart torn out, so she's heartless.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's a new omen that, like, bad shit's going down for, like, and it's going to be bad for witches and demons. Like, everybody's going to suffer.
So, the way it's written kind of seems like it's written presently.
Yeah.
Like, that part, at least.
Yes.
It was written in the present time, which is interesting.
Yeah, I never thought of that, actually. That, like, who's writing it? Who's coming up with these prophecies?
Yeah. Because, like, it seems like the second prophecy wasn't a thing in the first book, and now that this stuff has happened, there's another prophecy.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. But yeah. So not only did we have a quote from Dante's Inferno, now we have notes from the grimoire. And now we have a prequel, a precologue. I'm calling it a precologue, like an epilogue, but pre. So it's a precologue.
Okay.
I've made up, I don't know if this is a made up word, it must be, but
Probably.
I'm coining it. I'm calling Webster's tomorrow.
Okay.
I know it probably has a name, but I can't for the life of me remember what it is. So anyway, so they say just sometime before. So we don't know when this is taking place, but it's happening at some point. So there's a king, and he's walking through his castle, and he's in a bad mood the closer he gets to, quote-unquote, her. And he thinks about how this witch has been a plague on his lands, and he was planning on eradicating her. So
interesting.
He's got murder on the brain?
Yeah. It's all interesting.
Yeah.
Because we're like, is the king supposed to be the devil? Is this the witch he's supposed to love?
Yeah. We have no idea.
Is this a different witch? Like, what is happening?
So his wings burst from his shoulder blades. He's so angry he can't contain them. And he actually finds his witch sitting in his throne room on his throne. Like, she's sitting on his throne. It's like, if you want to insult a man, that's the way to do it.
Disrespectful.
And he wants her to get out. But she's trying to, like, be alluring and, like, sexy and turn him on and, like, tells him to take his pants off. And he's just like, no, get out. Like, he is not buying what she's selling.
Yeah.
So she, like, just drops the seduction act immediately. She, like, sees that, oh, I guess I'm not getting anywhere with him that way. And they sort of speak in code, right? Like, they're having a conversation that we don't have all the information on. So it feels like it's sort of speaking in, like, code language, because he threatens her, and she tells him that if he touches her, she will destroy all he holds dear. But he's like, well, I don't know. I don't hold anything dear. And
which
like,
is like, people always say that in
I
books.
know.
And you're like, we literally just had it in Empire of Storms. But
yeah,
Rolf was like, I don't love anything. I have nothing. And you're like, you have something. There's always fucking something.
Yes. Yeah. But like, then she's like, well, she was like, that's not true. So then he, like, holds a dagger to her throat, and then she takes his hand and uses it to slit her own throat. So, like, she is hard up. So, like, we have no idea why they're beefing, or, like, why she's going to such extremes to be, like, badass. But, like, she's just like, yeah, slit my throat. I ain't dying.
Yeah.
And he watches the wound stitch itself back together. And I'm assuming that that's, like, out of the ordinary for a witch.
Well, yeah, or they wouldn't have so easily killed them all in the first book.
Yeah. So she's got something going on.
Mm-hmm.
So then she actually looks at his wings, which he, like, he thinks about how much he enjoys his wings.
Maybe like, you have something to lose.
I don't care about anything. So he, he does love them. So she snaps her fingers and they disappear, and he can't summon them. And he keeps trying and trying and trying, and he can't summon them. And then she curses him that he will forget all that he loves and all the good in his life, and that when he knows true happiness, she will take what he loves too. So she's cursing him to that, like, essentially, if he ever becomes happy, she will steal whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, like, cursing him to be forever unhappy.
Which kind of just makes you think of, like, obviously I'm trying to piece shit together, but, like,
yeah,
the last book they said that the Devil's Brides died, maybe multiple. I can't remember if there was more than one. At least one.
I think it was one.
Yeah. Died. So you're like, was he happy? And then she took it away. Is that this curse in action?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so obviously he's freaking out over his wings, but he knows that, like, if he wants his wings back, he can't kill her. So, like, it's not one of those, oh, kill them and the curse is reversed. Nope. If he kills her, then he will never have his wings back. So he tells her that the devil may perform tricks, or, like, he may perform tricks, but he doesn't bargain. But he does make deals, or something like that. He's like, let's make a deal. So, yeah. Like, he's trying to bargain. So he says maybe he doesn't perform tricks or something. I don't know. I think I wrote it down wrong. It doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't really matter. But anyway, he's just insinuating that, like, he doesn't jump when she says so.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he asks her if she wants to strike a deal. So it looks like he's willing to sort of play with her to try and get what he wants back.
His wings.
Yeah.
At this point in time, because she hasn't taken anything else yet.
Yeah. So finally we get to chapter 1. I feel like there was a lot to get us to chapter 1.
Yeah.
So I said, finally, chapter 1.
Mm-hmm.
So we are in Emilia's point of view, and it picks up almost exactly where Kingdom of the Wicked stops. So we are with Emilia and Wrath as they make the descent into hell. So, like, she thinks that, like, hell isn't what she expected. So I guess, like, it's still, in my brain, sort of like a cave. Like, they're just descending stairs in a cave.
Gotcha, yeah.
And like she is still really pissed at Wrath, obviously, because you know, in her mind he betrayed her. And thought of how Envy, the prince, the demon prince Envy, called Wrath, the worst of them. And she, at the time, did not agree, but now she's agreeing. Because in her brain, Wrath used her, and, like, all of their, like, you know, they made out a whole bunch, they sort of started developing a relationship. He was kind to her, he got her things, like, he was considerate. So all of those things made her think he cared about her. And I guess she's angry because in her mind, he did all of that just to trick her into signing this contract and agreeing to be the queen of the underworld. Yeah. So she's pissed at him. So there's like this fog everywhere and she can't really see and it's really cold, but like she's wearing a metal corset and I don't understand why she's wearing a metal corset. Presumably she put it on herself before cause like she got dressed at her quote unquote house that she was living in with Wrath, cause remember they moved in together and her family didn't come looking for her. So they were living together and he gave her a bunch of clothing.
They were living together in sin.
Yeah. So like presumably she picked out her own outfit and then like how does a metal corset even work?
I don't like I remember the scene where she put on the clothes in the last book. Not super well, but I remember it happening. And I don't remember her putting on a metal corset. Like, they talked a lot about clothes. I feel like they would have mentioned it if it was.
And like the insinuation too is that she's wearing the metal corset on bare skin.
Ugh.
Which is, as I've learned, historically inaccurate. You don't wear corsets on bare skin. You always wear a chemise underneath.
Yeah. I don't get it. Like, did they just say, do you just like appear in hell and they're like, metal corsets, everyone?
Because corsets weren't like torturous enough.
Yeah.
I don't
know.
Anyway, it's a really odd choice. I feel like it was made exclusively for plot reasons.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, Anyway. So the fog clears and she sort of gets her first look at the underworld. They haven't passed officially through the gates yet, but like they're approaching the gates. And there's a huge gate with doors made of skulls. And like Wrath is just, so Wrath sort of has a persona that he puts on and then he has his true self. Sort of like Reese, right? Like how he is with the Court of Nightmares versus how he is at the Court of Dreams.
Yeah.
So he's being his emotionless asshole self. And she just asks him to summon Pride, her betrothed. So Pride is everyone assumes Pride is the king of hell because Pride is Lucifer. They all assume it's Lucifer. Right? And Lucifer, Pride was his greatest sin. So everyone's like, okay, Lucifer, Pride, king of hell.
Yeah.
So she's like, Pride is the king, so can you summon him, please? I want to meet my future husband.
Yeah.
But Wrath says that, like, he just reminds her that, like, it wasn't Pride that appeared in the bone circle. So, like, when he was first summoned to her, when Wrath was first summoned to her, she wasn't prideful. She was wrathful, which is, I think, why he showed up in the first place.
Well, it was a summoning spell specifically for him.
Oh. Well, I don't know then.
But she was also, maybe it won't work if you're not also feeling the emotion or the sin.
Maybe.
Both.
But, like, he was just saying it was her wrath. It was her fury. So, like, insinuating that, like, you may want him here, but, like, it's me that, like, you're best connected with? I don't know. Like, I don't understand what he was getting at. And she just says, like, nonetheless, I chose the devil. Like, the scroll that I signed said House Pride, so she chose someone else over Wrath, so how does it feel? Like, she is egging him on. She's trying to needle him into giving a response. And he just tells her that it's her choice, and if she's so certain about the devil, she should swear a blood oath. So she's like, okay, fine, I will. So she says, I, Emilia DiCarlo, freely choose the devil, and she spills a drop of her own blood, and it makes something ignite in Wrath's eyes, but Emilia doesn't really get why. And technically, we don't either.
Yeah. I don't.
You don't. I do.
Yeah.
So again, like, you know, this is one of those things where once you read it again, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
And, like, I can't wait for you to figure it out so then I can recall this moment.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she's just sort of a little confused, so he just proceeds through the gate, and she just has to follow him. And it's freezing cold. And he magics her cloak for her shoulders, for her to wrap around herself. But she thinks that, like, he's obviously not doing it for her well-being, but he's doing it to ensure that he can deliver her unscathed to Pride. So, like, she 100% believes that every single thing he did and said to her in the first book, all of their moments, their connection, all of that was fake.
Yeah, manipulation.
Yeah. And she's like, he betrayed her because he wants to earn his freedom from the underworld. So, like, it's like, I almost feel like I should have read up on, because I remember us being like, this curse thing is so convoluted. Like, there's so many aspects to it. So, like, someone died, the bride died, and, like, apparently the gate to hell is weakening, causing lesser demons to be able to slip out of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't let the princes out.
Yeah.
So, like, the lesser powerful demons can get out, but the stronger ones can't. So, like, Pride needs to marry, and there needs to be a queen on the throne in order for the princes to be able to escape.
I don't think it's for them to be able to escape.
Well, be able to come and go as they please.
No, because, well, I don't know. I know that she agreed to marry Pride because she was like, I think she says that, like, Wrath agreed to then use the Cornicellos to close the gate or, like, stop demons from going into Earth.
Right.
But I don't know, like, how he's doing that. And I don't know if that means that they can suddenly travel through it.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, he betrayed her to earn his freedom, is what her assumption is. So, he sort of stops her and says, I need to tell you 3 things before we actually enter the 7 circles. So, the 7 circles of hell. So, he says there are 3 rules to always abide by. 1, don't ever reveal your true fears, because this world's going to torture you. So if you admit your real fears, then the world itself will torture you for it. 2, control your desires, or they will taunt you with illusions. And that desire will be magnified 10 times. Like, especially where they're about to go. So, essentially, like, shut everything down.
So easy.
Yeah. And the 3rd... so he tells her, like, we're about to head into the sin corridor. So, like, you really have to be aware of those first 2 rules. And she's like, what's the sin corridor? And he says, it's new subjects of the realm are tested to see what their dominant sin is and which house they align best with. It's like the Sorting Hat.
Yeah.
But for sins and hell.
Makes sense.
So the corridor itself uses magic and will test her emotions to see which one she responds either the most to or the best to or something like that. And like they have to walk through Like, they have to walk through it so that she could be tested. Like, that's a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, she's like, why do I even need to be tested? I've just signed my soul away to House Pride. So, like, I don't understand why I need to bother being tested. But he says, like, you just have to live long enough to figure it out. So, like, this is going to be dangerous. Anyway, then the third rule, he says, is to be cautious, which, oh my God, words. Be cautious when making blood bargains with a prince of hell, especially one involving the devil. And I'm like, didn't she just do that?
Yeah, it's a bit late for this guy.
Yeah, like, why are you... I don't know. So, like, she just did that, and she's, like, extra pissed again that he betrayed her, but she just swallows her rage and says to him, like, I'm ready to be taken to my husband. And I'm just like, girl, we hear you. You want to be taken to Pride. Like, chill the fuck out.
I know, but she's still not there after this week. So I kind of get it.
I know, but, like, it's literally been, a minute. And she's, like, said it 3 times. Take me to my husband now. I'd like to see my betrothed now.
Yeah.
It's like, girl, he'll do it when he can.
But he's not.
But
okay.
Anyway. So, they just decide they're going to pass through the gate, which is, like, kind of a cave area. And then they exit onto, like, a mountaintop tundra thing. And, like, it's fucking cold.
Stupid.
And they look behind them, and demon magic winds its way around the skull, shutting the underworld. And Emilia's like, shit, we're really down here, like, forever.
Yeah.
And, like, she's sort of confused because she's like, I thought the gates were broken, and that's how demons are getting out. So, like, how is it so tightly shut? And he reminds her that the Horn of Hades is back. So, I guess the gate is safe again. So, the Horn of Hades, our big sort of... wasn't our big sort of, like, twist last book, but one of them was that Emilia and Vittoria wore these amulets called cornicellos, and together, like, everybody, all the demons were looking for the Horn of Hades, and that it's really important for something. A curse? Part of the curse or something? Yeah. And so everyone was looking for them. No one knew where everyone was looking for it. No one knew where the Horn of Hades was, and it turned out to be two of their cornicellos was the Horn of Hades. So I guess now that it's been figured out and Wrath has possession of them, the gate is working again. So she sees a castle out in the distant mountains and asks, is that where Pride lives? There's 7 of them. Why is she assuming Pride is there? I don't know. But he just says no. That's where Lust lives. So she was looking at Lust's castle. Like, not even his castle. Like, it was Lust. It was somebody completely uninvolved in this moment.
Yeah.
But he explains to her, like, about the layout of the 7 circles of hell. And in my brain, the way it made it seem was that they were concentric. Like, one nested within another.
Possibly.
That
kind of makes sense in, like, in the way I think.
Yeah.
That, like, it's Dante's Inferno is, I kind of imagine that the same way, and I don't know if that's how that's supposed to be imagined either, but that's kind of like...
But, like, would that not mean that whoever's at the center has the least amount of land?
Well, I guess maybe they all have equal amounts of land. It's just that that's a circle and the rest are donuts. You could still get the same area.
Right.
But okay. I don't know.
Anyway, so Lust is on the outside, and Pride is actually one of the inner circles close to Wrath's house. So him and Pride live close together. So Wrath tells her that they have to cross the Sin corridor on foot for the first time to find out what Sin she's aligned to. They can't use magic or anything like that.
Of course.
Yeah.
This is one of those, like,
I know.
Fucking course.
Yeah. So she asks if mortals and demons are both tested the same way, because she's a mortal.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually tells her that mortals don't usually make it to the Sin corridor, which
Makes
is
sense.
Yeah, like he says, normally their hell is actually self-imprisonment on an aisle outside the gates, and that they live in a reality of their own making without ever leaving.
Great.
So, like, part of me is confused because, like, I guess they live in, like, a torturous reality of their own making. Like, are they living in ignorance, or are they living just, like, a perpetual nightmare?
I just assume a perpetual nightmare. If I was stuck in my head forever, it'd be a perpetual nightmare.
But he just makes it seem like they're not even aware, like, they never leave, but, like, he doesn't say that they can't leave.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just weird, like, if you could leave, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it kind of just makes it seem like they don't realize.
Yeah, like they're not aware.
Or they are like, I'm in hell, I'm so bad, I have to stay here. Don't know.
But, like, are we considering it hell, or are we considering it the underworld? Because I feel like that's two different things.
Yeah, it is.
Because hell is for bad people. The underworld is for everybody.
Yeah. I guess the thought of this self-imprisonment, though, sounds more like hell than a decent afterlife for somebody who's not awful. But, yeah, there's a lot in those few lines.
Yeah.
That I don't know if we ever get more on, would we?
Yes.
Oh, interesting.
We will. Anyway, so for some reason, this reminds Emilia about Star Witches. So I think she found out that, like, she is technically descended from Star Witches.
Mm-hmm.
And she remembers her Nona telling her that Star Witches are guardians between realms. But then she's like, why would they need guarding if the humans never leave their isles?
Mm-hmm.
And Wrath just suggests, like, maybe that's not all they're guarding.
Yeah.
So, like, a lot to think about. So they head down the corridor, which is just like an outdoor... It's just a path through, like, a mountain. They're just walking... It just seems... They're calling it the Sin Corridor, but it's just they're walking, like, they're taking a hike through the mountains in the wintertime. And she's literally in a metal corset with no shirt, like no chemise underneath, a long skirt, like little slippers, like little ballet. I'm calling them little ballet slippers because that's just what I think that they are, but like little slip-on ballet flats.
Yeah.
And now a cloak. And they're trudging through snow.
Great.
So, just, you know. Ugh.
You'd think that, like, Wrath would have realized.
Like, suggested before taking her down into the cave, you may want to change their...
Yeah.
Like, or something. Because, like, obviously he must be somewhat invested, regardless of the reason, in keeping her alive. Because he saved her life before.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, connected them. We still don't really know in what way.
Yeah.
So... You know, like, I don't know. I just feel like he should have told her to change or something. So, they start walking down the quote-unquote corridor. And she starts to feel, like, the heat of his gaze and, like, starts to get all, like, horny. But he sort of just says, like, stop looking at me like that, like, and just reminds her, again, she's being tested. So it's the magic of the corridor sort of like poking and prodding at her to see what emotion she reacts to the most, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So that was lust. Then she sort of, like, acts really, like, haughty. So, like, as if I was looking at you. Like, huh. So that's them, the corridor testing her for pride. And then it tests her for anger. But it's all sort of, like, vague and weak. Like, it's not super strong at this point. So a storm starts brewing as they're walking. And Wrath starts to build a shelter. And Emilia's like, I don't want to sleep with you. But he's like, well, I'm not nursing you back to health if you get sick. So suit yourself. But, like, I'm building this shelter. And we're like, aren't you?
Yeah.
Dude. So, he's being hard, but we all know
he's a softie.
He's a softie. So, when the shelter is built, Wrath starts taking his shirt off. And Emilia's, like, nervous about it. She's like, what is he doing?
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out he's trying to be a nice guy, and he actually gives her his shirt. It's something to wear to bed that's not the corset. So he said, like, she was like, why can't you just, like, magic me some clothes? And he says that at this point in the Sin corridor, they're not allowed to use magic. When he magicked her the cloak before, they were just outside of it. So he could. So he says that, like, magic is considered interference and it's not allowed. Now, I don't know who gets notified. I don't know who punishes who. I don't know what the punishment is, but it's not allowed.
This is the part that I'm just like, it's so convenient.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know.
I wonder if it's ever not snowing up there.
Doesn't seem like it, because it seems like, after reading this week, that, like, coldness is equated to, like, power and shit.
Right.
So I kind of assume no, but who knows? Maybe they get a summer.
Maybe
if all the princes go on vacation, it'll be warm there.
Yeah. So, Wrath leaves the tent to let her change, or their little shelter. It's not really a tent. But obviously, she can't get out of her corset by herself, so she needs him to come back and help her. And in my head, I'm like, who the fuck put the corset on you then?
I don't understand where this corset came from.
I really do not. Like, if she could get herself into a corset, she should be able to get herself out of a corset.
Yep.
So she has to, like, essentially he has to come back in and help her get out of it. And she just tells him not to look too pleased about it, even though he doesn't. So, like, he looks, like, really unhappy to be undressing her. So she just, like, well, don't look so happy about it. And he says that she doesn't want him to like her because it would be dangerous, because he'd ruin her for the other demon princes. Essentially, if you want to go sexual with it, like, he's so big, he would ruin her for everyone else. But, like, yeah. So,
or he'd just, like,
he's such a great catch.
Yeah, it's common.
Yeah. So he gets her out of her corset real quick. And that leads her to thinking of all the experience he must have with other women, and she gets really jealous. And he reads her emotions, because he can, and tells her that that's another test, envy. Like, she needs to shut down her emotions. And she's like, oh, right, I wouldn't ever be jealous of him with other women. I hate him.
Yeah.
And we're like, sure you do, girl. So they lie down, and he falls asleep. And she, of course, is hyper aware of him lying next to her, even though they aren't touching. And, like, as he's asleep, she examines his tattoo. It matches hers. It showed up on her, I think, after she made the deal with him. Mm-hmm. Like, after she made her, like, called him.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts to have, like, lustful thoughts about him, which she shuts down. So she's like, lust is testing me again. So, like, she knows when she gets, like, a surge of emotion, it's the sin corridor sort of testing her for different sins. So she goes to sleep, and she wakes up a while later, And she's all cuddled up against him, of course, and his arm is around her. Again, like, I'm assuming she's huddled up for warmth. And even though she knows she should move, she doesn't want to. And he all of a sudden wakes up and he says her name, and she's turned on again. And she thinks of the rules of like propriety in the human world. How, like, men are allowed to fool around, and it's a catch to marry a sexually experienced man because, you know, then they could treat you right. But women are expected to remain virginal and innocent.
Of course.
Yeah. So, but, like, and she does say that her family being witches weren't as tied to that construct.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, still a little bit.
Yeah. Like, they can't just be out. Well, if they're having sex with other people, people will notice, and then it'll come back. It's, like, still that kind of. And then, like, if they're out dancing naked, they're going to be called witches.
Yeah. So, yeah, she feels like, well, I'm not in the mortal realm anymore, so I'm not bound by any of its rules or constraints or anything like that. So she, like, cuddles further into him. And that causes him to be turned on. So he, like, I guess she's, like, back to his front. And so, yeah, so he, like, reaches from behind and starts unbuttoning her shirt really slowly and asks if he's her favorite sin. And, like, she's, like, close to combusting. She is so turned on. And he's slowly undressing her, and she, like, spins around to face him and wants him to kiss her. And they kiss, and he runs his hand up her skirt and gets real close to the vagine, which is where she wants it. And, like, she groans his name before she hears him suggesting she put her clothes back on since it's so cold outside. So that's when, like, everything dissolves and she realizes that that whole interaction was an illusion. And it was, like, another test from the Sin Corridor. And she was essentially, like, snuggling up against him and, like, sort of doing everything herself.
Yeah. It's so awkward.
Which is so embarrassing. Can you imagine, like, having someone snap you out and being, like, you were grinding against them and, like, feeling
taking
yourself,
your clothes off,
taking your own
like,
clothes off, feeling yourself up.
Yeah.
So obviously he wasn't really touching her, which was sad.
Yes.
And he tells her that when he touches her, she won't question whether it's real or not. So yeah, he specifies the word when as opposed to if, and she notices that, and, like, this is still the middle of the night. So, like, he sort of just, like, rolls over and goes back to sleep. And she's like, okay. So she has to try and roll over and go back to sleep for a while. And she can't. It takes her a while. But she does fall asleep. And this time when she falls asleep, she doesn't have sexy dreams. She dreams of murder. And a beautiful woman with starlight eyes screaming about vengeance. And she feels like she knows the woman. And that the curse was actually aimed at her.
Interesting.
So I'm like, is this from the same woman from the beginning, maybe?
Yeah. Or one of the brides, which could be the woman from the beginning, because I don't know anything.
Yeah. Anyway, so they wake up the next morning, and they're getting ready to go. She's obviously hungry. She hasn't eaten in a day. But he tells her that they're going to be walking all day before they get where they need to go. So, like, he didn't bring any supplies. He's walking a mortal through the Sin Corridor, through the mountains, and he didn't bring any supplies.
I just, like, I don't...
You would think, like, you know what's going on, sir. You know what she's going to have to do. Why would you not think to, like, bring her a coat or a blanket or, like, a pack of food?
Also, why are they spending the night somewhere? Like, I get, like, just rest a bit and just keep walking. Get through it. Or does it have to be in the day? Is that another one of the stupid rules that make no sense?
No.
Who's policing these rules?
Anyway, so he just tells her, he's like, we're going to be walking all day before we get to our destination. So, like, suck it up. So she puts her corset back on and remembers remembers her family, and she misses them, and she hopes they're safe. But, like, she thinks that, like, her sister's death is still, her grief is really, really overwhelming. So, like, she is not, even, I think it's just our little reminder that, like, hey, her twin sister died and she's not over it.
Yeah.
Like, even though we haven't heard her talk or think about Vittoria at all, really.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's just sort of our little, oh no, she is still upset about it. She does ask him about Antonio, who is the guy that killed her sister. Who she sort of had a thing for at the beginning of Kingdom of the Wicked. And Wrath just tells her that he's somewhere safe. Because I guess they caught him and Wrath took him somewhere.
Yeah, because she, like, wanted to bring him along and Wrath, like, magicked him away, but for some reason she needs to walk through this tundra.
Good point. That's a good point.
I think this is why I didn't like this part. I was like, why are we doing this? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. No, you're right. She's, like, taking off his shirt to give it back to him, but he tells her to keep it, and then he just puts his jacket over his bare chest, and she's like...
Yeah.
And yes. But also she's like, oh yeah, like, he probably doesn't want it after I've slept in it. And
because I'm so gross.
Yeah, and he's just sort of like, I guess he's trying to cover up the nice gesture by being like, oh yeah, it's all wrinkled. I wouldn't be caught dead wearing that now, because she knows he has a thing for clothing.
Yeah.
So she's like, oh, he likes nice clothes so much, he would much rather show up, like, he'd much rather traipse around the mountains naked than wear a shirt that's wrinkly. So, like, anyway, it was just an okay exchange, I guess. She does notice, though, that he's wearing both amulets. He is wearing both of the cornicellos, and that pisses her off. But she tamps it down because she's not in the mood to be tested again. And she looks at him, and he thinks she's getting turned on. So he just says, he was like, unless you want, like, a repeat, like, stop looking at me like that. And she's like, yeah, you're attractive. She's like, yeah, you turned me on, essentially.
Yeah.
But then she's like, you can desire someone, you can be attracted to someone and still hate their guts. Like, you know, it's purely physical. Yeah. And she's like, I'll never love you. And, like,
why would you ever say that?
I feel like saying that is just, like, guaranteeing that you will.
Yeah, 100%. Why else would a character in a book say it?
Yeah.
Enemies to lovers.
Then he tells her that both love and hate are rooted in passion, and that line may become blurred over time.
Love it.
So essentially, like, yeah, you say you hate me now and you'll never love me, but love and hate are often confused for each other, which I don't understand. Like, I don't understand how people can say that they hate someone and being like, oh, hate might be love. Like, in this case, I get it. She doesn't even actually hate him. She just feels hurt by him.
Yeah, like, it's almost like a common trope in books, because I don't know if you've read The Hating Game.
No.
That's basically that entire book. But it's like, it is a thing in books, and I'm like, I don't really get why, because I don't mix up hate and love ever.
Well, that's what I mean, like, and it's not even just books, but also, like, TV and movies and stuff, like, like the whole, the enemies to lovers thing is, you know, a very common theme, but it's one of those things I don't understand, because there's never been somebody that I despised that I was like, I'd sleep with you, though. I could very easily love you. You know what I mean? Like, it's not...
Yeah.
I don't, that has never happened to me.
No, and I think it's all just because this genre is so popular, and I can't blame them because I'm a fucking sucker for it.
Yeah.
So, you gotta get there somehow, and they have to be like, we need you to believe the love, so...
Yeah, I guess.
Passion. I don't know.
So, Emilia then remembers that, like, something her nana once said, that once someone caught a demon's attention, they would stop at nothing to claim them. Which is, so, like, she's like, oh, he's determined to have me now. And she thinks about the way that Wrath looked at her, and that made her feel like, oh, that's definitely true. And that something between them has sort of changed. And I don't know if she means for the better or for the worse, or, like, for the sexier.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So, they travel. As they travel, like, Emilia's obviously freezing. She's wearing these tiny little slippers. And she is honestly worried about frostbite.
I think that Wrath just doesn't understand humans.
Probably not.
That's the only explanation here.
Well, but at the same time, so, like, she starts to shiver uncontrollably. And Wrath just, like, looks at her and is like, hurry up!
Yeah.
Let's go faster.
Yeah.
So, like, that pissed her off, because she's like, dude, I'm freezing.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts imagining killing him slowly, which he notices. And I thought he's sort of trying to distract her at this moment. So, like, he tells her that her anger is his own personal aphrodisiac. Which just makes her more angry, which I don't understand. Like, why? If someone said that to you, that would make you angry?
It depends on the person.
I guess.
But yeah, I guess it would be frustrating to be angry at someone and then be like, I love it when you're angry. And then I'd be like, I could see being really frustrated about that. I could see Wrath. Yep. I can feel it.
Yeah. Anyway, I just sort of am like, ugh.
Oh, yeah.
I sort of had thought, though, that her extra anger might have been her being tested again, but it doesn't confirm that.
No, and I don't know, because this happens a lot, and she's like, I'm being tested, and I'm like, no, you just want to fuck him. Like, later on in the book, I'm like, not every time you find him attractive is because you're being tested.
Yeah.
But she thinks it is.
Yeah, she does. So, they keep traveling for a few hours, and Wrath seems worried. I'm assuming about her, because she's, like, shivering uncontrollably and, like, getting hypothermia.
Mm-hmm.
So he scouts ahead, leaving her alone, which is really smart. And while he's gone, a 3-headed dog approaches her, like, angrily and chomps at her. But, like, Wrath comes back and intimidates it away, and he tells her, oh, it's a hellhound, it's a lesser demon, it's not super dangerous, only slightly. There's lots of demons in these woods, and that's not one to worry about. It's like, it almost bit her, but okay.
Yeah, it would have killed her.
So, they keep going. And, like, at this point, I think the story has said, like, 4 times, they walked for hours. Or, like, they traveled for hours. And I'm like, how many hours are in this fucking day?
It's hell. Time works differently.
I guess. So they finally reach a mountain, and Emilia's, like, absolutely exhausted and, like, swaying on her feet. And she almost feels like she's gonna die. And she's, like, freaking out because she's like, I can't climb that mountain. So he goes over and does the easy thing. He just magically makes an opening in it. And I'm like, so you can do that?
I thought you couldn't use magic. Wasn't that a rule just then? Like a little while ago? A few pages ago? No magic?
Are they past the sin corridor now?
Oh, maybe.
I don't know.
Were there no other sins than lust and...
But maybe that... Well, so she was very briefly tested for lust, envy. Wrath, and pride. So I guess there was no way for her to feel gluttony because what was around her.
Yeah. There should be something if this is the sin corridor, though.
But it only tests her for what she is susceptible to. So maybe she's just not susceptible at all to gluttony or the other two.
If I was there, it would just be like, instead of imagining fucking him, it would be me, like, with a bunch of beers around me. Like, yay!
Yeah.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah, I would have unlimited, like, linguine or something.
That sounds good, too.
I know. So, like, he offers to carry her because she's, like, looking so ill. And she's like, no, I can do it! And then she takes, like, 2 steps, and she can't. So he's like, I'm gonna carry you anyway. And I'm like, I feel like he actually, like, it's actually stated that he carries her like a sack of potatoes. Or something to that effect. It might not state it word for word, but, like, I think he's actually carrying her, like, over-the-shoulder style, not bridal style.
Yeah, I guess.
Maybe not.
Well, I'm just thinking, like, I don't have a specific way I'd hold a sack of potatoes. If anything, I'd probably just hold it like this in front of me, like with 2 hands in front of me.
Yeah. Maybe
so I'm just kind of confused by the
maybe he is
descriptor.
Cradling her like a baby. I don't know. But so he's carrying her anyways through the mountain, and she wants him to put her down, but he refuses. And she's worried about her future husband seeing her like that. Like, I guess seeing her in a comparable position with Wrath.
Yeah, I guess.
Seeing her weak. I don't know.
Yeah.
So she falls asleep. She in his arms. She's not well. And she wakes briefly to tell him that he said he wouldn't take care of her. Which, you know, he said at the beginning, I'm not going to take care of you. But here he is sort of, I mean, I wouldn't say this is taking care of her. I would say that this is carrying her because she's unable to carry herself. It's either that or leave her there to die.
Well.
So, he just says, like, before she is out of it again, like, she thinks she hears him say that he lied. Oh, lying, isn't that one of the sins? I don't know.
Think so.
No? Okay.
I don't know. Because, well, I can't look it up. I might spoil something. But, like, I don't remember what sins are the same. It's like, isn't adultery a sin? But there's not a prince of adultery, is there?
No, I assume that's lust.
Yeah.
Hang on.
But not all lust is adultery. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
Pride, greed.
Makes sense.
Wrath, envy. Oh, so greed we didn't get.
Oh, yeah.
Wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth.
Sloth.
So we forgot about greed and sloth.
Is this her sloth?
Oh, mate.
I don't think it is. It's literal hypothermia. But it's kind of
She's literally dying. But it's fine.
Yeah. So Anir is actually there, and I think she recognizes his voice. Because she met him in the first book. And asks if she's dead, because she looks it. So I guess she's kind of woken up again, and this is obviously in her point of view. And he says that no one would blame Wrath if she did die, not even ... But Wrath stops him from saying anything. We're like, what was he gonna say? We can assume that he would have said not even Pride would blame him if she died, but, like, maybe not, because that seems dumb.
Yeah, I
don't know.
I don't know, yeah. The ... is weird.
Yeah, so Wrath just stops him and just asks for warm water and blankets. And this happened in the last book too. But she's woken up and she's chained to something rock hard and unmoving.
Oh, God. Is it his body?
It is his body.
Oh, for fuck's
of course
sake.
it's his body.
She's chained to it?
Yeah.
Like, literally.
No, it's his arms are the chain she's feeling. She actually, like,
For
it's because he's
fuck's
so,
sakes.
yeah. You know, this happened in the last book. So she struggles against it, and it was his arms, not chains, but he's holding her still, and he lays her on a mattress. And she just assumes that they're at the Devil's Castle, so she, like, grabs for him not to let her go, because she's actually terrified of meeting her betrothed, and she's not really ready for it, especially in this moment. He kisses her forehead, but then tells her to stay still in a hard voice. So, like, she's like, did he even kiss me? Am I imagining things? Like, what's going on? And then he starts tearing off her damp clothes. And she doesn't care that she's naked. She wants to, like, claw off her skin and sit in ice because she is burning up.
What?
That's what happens when you get hypothermia.
I know, and this is gonna sound really bad. I'm gonna sound like a really big jerk. But, like, I wish she was stronger. Like, I wish she didn't get hypothermia from being in the snow for a day. And, like, I know that that's unrealistic because, like, she was wearing nothing and she was in a cold mountain walking through it. So, like, I get it. However, I don't want her to be taken out by something as, like, cold weather.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just seems so weak and damselly and distressly. Oh, I can't be outside too long. I get sick.
Yeah.
But
I do get what you're saying. I just think it was stupid that she was wearing what she was wearing.
Yeah.
And if she was wearing something else, she would have been fine. And, like, I do think in, like, next week even we start, because I did read a bit of my section next week. Like, we start getting that she is going to be able to protect herself better.
Yeah.
In situations like this. So, like, I'll let her grow, I guess. I feel like this is just another pointing towards the fact that she didn't learn enough. As, like, we kind of get later that she's like, did I not learn enough as a witch? And this is like, yeah, you probably fucking didn't.
Yeah. If
you can't do anything. But yeah. So she's not great. She's oh yeah. So she wants to sit in ice, her eyes close, and she sees statues and flowers and fire and hearts and jars and a wall of skulls. I don't know if any of that's important because I haven't read this book yet, so I had to put it in. Wrath tells her to stay with him, and he massages warmth into her fingers and wrists and up, and then, like, her other arm, and then her feet, and she groans because he's, like, actually massaging her feet at the same time, and she's like,
yeah,
feels good. Which is fair.
Who doesn't love a massage? Unless you have a thing about people touching you, then I get it. But, like, massages are good.
They are good. And then I guess we can assume Anir leaves the stuff outside of the room and, like, knocks on the door. So Wrath goes to get it, and he wraps her in a blanket, and she's, like, feels like it's too hot, so she tries to push it off, but then he, like, wraps himself around the blanket and, like, sits behind her to trap her in it. And she struggles and says she needs to be in the earth below ground, but he knows the symptoms of hypothermia and that's, like, one of them. And, like, I guess it is, but...
like, what? Like, wanting to be, like, underground?
I guess so. Like, I know
that... Is a symptom of hypothermia... But here's my thing. How does he know what hypothermia is if he doesn't know that mortals need food and need blankets?
I have no idea. I maybe... I can't. I don't even have a... I've got nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I just...
Yeah.
I don't get it.
There's not both. It's not both.
Yeah.
He can't know both. So he had to have known better. He gave her a shirt, so obviously he knew better. But he just thought she could power through hypothermia. I don't know. Anyway.
God.
He has her drink some, like, warm water, and everything is too hot, and everything hurts, and she drifts, like, in and out of sleep after the drink, so she's like, oh, he probably gave me something. Which is good, because then she'll warm up.
Mm-hmm.
Not great to drug people against their will. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. But I think we can safely say if somebody is, like, in the hospital, they are often given, like, drugs to knock them out if they're, like, in too much pain, and they can't really consent to that, but the professional chooses for them. It's just in this case, we have a demon deciding.
Yeah, it's
not a doctor.
It felt a bit weird saying it when you're like, he's also like a romantic interest at this point. And I was like, he drugs her. And I'm like, oh, that's not. It's not like that.
Yeah.
She, I guess, sees an angel, she thinks, and then she realizes that it's Wrath and he's fearsome. And he's like, I guess, giving her more warmth and fussing over her, which is like, you know, cute. Later she rolls over and just like looks at him and is studying his eyes because he's just awake there holding her, I guess. And she's just like turned over and looked at him. And I'm like, this is interesting. She's naked. Is he naked?
Woo!
What's happening? But she just studies his eyes and then says sometimes she thinks she wants to be his friend, even with the past, and maybe aligning their houses would like be smart because she's like, she's with Pride now and he's Wrath, so they could like form an alliance. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you don't know anything that's going on down here. You can't just start forming alliances, like.
But I mean, she's about to be the queen, so like, we could say you can't like be queen and you know nothing going on down here, but she's about to do that, so like.
But I feel like she should probably speak to her husband before she decides she's gonna like offer an alliance to somebody. Yeah,
no, I feel you there.
But yeah, it's just interesting. But anyway, he just looks angry, but he tells her to rest, and she does, and she tries to say thank you, but she's just like out of it again, I guess. He speaks to her as she's like drifting off, and she knows it's important, but she can't hear what he's saying. So she doesn't know what he said, but clearly it's something that I want to know, and I wish they told us, but they don't. She wakes up and he's gone, and she doesn't know where she is here, but like the delirium's finally gone, and she's like, shit.
Yeah,
like,
what
what's
has
going
happened?
on now?
Yeah.
Yeah. She sees, like, the ceiling has little lights, kind of like stars, and there's so much silver around, and she wonders if, like, the silver is actually white gold, because Wrath's, metal-y thing is gold, like
the metal
house
associated with him or something.
Yeah, the metal associated with his house is gold, because you need something gold when you summon him. There's, like, a giant tapestry of a garden, and it's summer on one side and winter on the other, and she wants to find the artist to hear about the inspiration because she wants to go there. And I'm like, did he make it? Is that what we're getting to? Like, is that going to come up? But I don't know. She, like, pulls the sheet off the bed like a makeshift dress because, like, obviously she doesn't have any clothes on. And then he clears his throat, and she turns around, and he has a robe for her. And she asks where they are, and he says, a bedchamber.
Obviously.
And you're like, ugh, of course. But she asks if it's his, and he says no. And they kind of like, he needles her, and then she gets annoyed. And it's like how all of their conversations seem to be going, especially in the beginning. But she remembers then that he called her anger an aphrodisiac, and she like tries to push it down because she's like, I don't want to turn him on.
Yes, you do.
Right. So she asks if this is Pride's house, and he says, no, it's House Wrath. And she says that, you know, I signed a contract. Why am I here? Shouldn't you be bringing me to House Pride? It's another one of those.
Another one
he's like,
bring me to my husband.
Yeah. I'd be the same way. If the person that betrayed you was like, you think they betrayed you, and you're like, why are you doing all of this? Just bring me where I'm supposed to be and leave me alone. So yeah, he asks if she actually wants to go there, and she just says she made a blood vow, and she asks why it matters, but he asks again, like, does she want to? And she thinks that she wants to avenge her twin and go home, but she obviously doesn't say that. And she stays silent and thinks of pleasant things because she knows he can sense emotion. And he can sense if she lies. So she knows, like, well, she's kind of testing if she can, like, get away with it by thinking of something else and not thinking of the actual question so that he doesn't sense.
Yeah, it's smart, really.
It is, yeah. And he asks if that's a yes, and she nods, and she can see that he, like, hurt flashes over his face, which is my favorite thing, when people can just tell.
Yeah.
But then he also lashes out at her, because that's what they do, and he says, like, he'll bring her there when his brother invites them. And she's kind of surprised they need to be invited, and he says if he enters without his brother's consent, it's seen as a threat, and it doesn't matter if he's technically doing work for his brother. Like, he's not allowed to cross into his territory, kind of thing. Which is interesting, because you're like, the corridor of sin must go through, like, all of the houses and just be neutral land, or they wouldn't be able to go anywhere but their own circle.
I took it as the sin corridor is outside of like, it's like a long, like, walk from the gate to the 7 circles. So I took it to be that it was. Oh, but I guess I don't know. I see what you're saying, because then how would you walk if you're walking? If you have to get through everybody else's circle to get to yours, how do you do that? I'm assuming maybe once you're through the sin corridor, I'm assuming you can magic your way.
You can transport yourself to whichever one is yours.
Well, I'm also thinking that maybe that mountain, because he made that tunnel through the mountain, maybe that's something that's always there, and maybe there's different, like, offshoots for it. Like, this leads to this house, this leads to this one.
Yeah, that makes sense. More than anything.
We might be coming up with things at this point that are not true. Who knows?
Yeah, so she's just like, but I'm technically a part of House Pride because I signed that contract, so can't I go there alone, basically? And I'm like, why would you ever want to go alone? But she says that she's sure he would welcome her into their marital bed, and the room chills, and she's like, I don't even know if he realizes that he changed the temperature in the room because he's pissed. But he just says that his brother would welcome her and anyone else if she's willing. And she's just, like, scandalized by the thought of multiple people in bed together. And he just says, like, this isn't like the mortal world. And she counters that lust is a sin. And he says that there's other things to lust for, not just sexual. And if a prince affects her, then it's usually because she struggles with something. So, like, if lust is affecting her, it's because... Well, he specifically says that, like, if she's interested in sex and lust is affecting her, then maybe she fears passion or intimacy. So, like, there's something about the sins that affect you are because of something. I don't want to say, like, of a fear, I guess. Like, not like a deficiency, but, like, of a fear you have around it, which is interesting. We're like, so, why is wrath so...
So, like... Are they saying that, like, maybe gluttony could affect you because you're afraid of addiction, sort of a thing?
Maybe. It could be that, yeah.
Okay.
I just feel like we don't really get into any of the other ones other than, like, lust and wrath, because those are the ones that obviously she's dealing with. But I would say that makes sense. Yeah, he basically just says, like, if a prince is affecting her, it's something she struggles with.
Right.
So that makes sense. She says, like, that's not the case for her. Like, she's not afraid of passion or intimacy, and she doesn't struggle with lust. And it's inappropriate to discuss what she may or may not do with her husband. And you're like, okay.
Girl.
He just says, you're welcome for saving you. That's twice now, and no gratitude. And she's just pissed because, you know. And she also didn't really think of the, like, actual implications of having to sleep with Pride to, like, consummate the marriage. So she lashes out at Wrath and calls him prideful. And he tells her to be careful. And she says, or what? He'll sell her soul. And then she's like, this is all his fault, is what she's really thinking.
But is it?
Yeah. That's how she feels. So she asks why he's here, and, like, if he has to wait until she consummates the marriage to be free, because that's the, like, assumption she's under, is that he got her soul to free himself. So, like, shouldn't he be free now?
Yeah.
Like, why is he still waiting? And she's like, do you need to see us have sex to, like, make it so that you're free? Like, what are you waiting for?
Why are you still around me?
And she says that she's sure that he can watch if he wants to see her lie back and take it like a good little queen. That's a line.
Yikes.
And she thinks he looks at her with hatred and tells her that there are clothes in the dresser, and he tells her to do what she wants and that she can leave if she wants to, but he'll be back when pride summons her. She thinks, like, he leaves then, and she thinks she does appreciate that he saved her, and she would have said so if he didn't piss her off so much. But it was useful because she did realize he can only detect that she's lying when she, like, says the words, when she speaks them. So she learned something. So she debates running after him to strangle or kiss him, and you're like, of course, because love and hate are so closely intertwined.
But, like, can I just say that, like, something that sort of annoys me about her as a character is that, like, I find her really, like, she's so much angrier than she was made out to be at the beginning. Like, I feel like...
Do you not think it's because she's in House of Wrath, though?
Maybe it is, but, like, I just feel like all she wants to do is argue, and, like, maybe it has something to do with her sister and all that, but, like, at the beginning of the story, of the series, she just seemed so, like, kind and gentle and, like, your quintessential, like, she likes to cook.
Good twin.
Yeah, I guess, but, like, she loves cooking and, like, she just seemed so settled and, like, so just calm. And now, and again, maybe it is the fact that her sister died, and that's why she just seems so mad all the time.
But she did kind of have some of this in the first one, because all she cared about was vengeance and getting back at,
but again, that was after her sister died.
Yeah, but I think she's still riding that.
I know. I wish, like, if this is a key component of her character, I just wish we had seen a little bit of it, or a little bit more of it, in the first book before her sister had died.
Yeah. I get what you're saying. I don't know. It is weird to, like, just completely flip, but I do think, like, part of it is him bringing out the wrath in her. Yeah. But, yeah. So she realizes she needs to focus, because once she goes to House of Pride, she won't be able to come back here unless, like, she gets an invite. So she may as well, like, try to figure some shit out here. The robe he left, she notices, has, like, flowers that match the tattoos that they both have. Their betrothal tattoos, because that's accidentally what she did when she summoned him. And it's interesting, because she's like, it reminds her of something that she'd pick for herself. But it also makes her think of the tattoos, because the tattoos that they have are still, like, growing, even though she did a spell to, like, end their betrothal. So she's like, there's some secrets around that she doesn't understand. And she's looking at the robe and thinking of how, like, she would have chosen it for herself, and he knows her so well, and he stayed to keep her alive, even though he could have let her die. And then she throws the robe in the fire. And I'm like, wasn't quite expecting that, but I get it.
Yeah, it's just...
anger. Wrath. So she goes to the closet then, because she's naked, and the clothes are overwhelming and scandalous, and she, like, picks up a cashmere dress and thinks of, like, picking a fight with Wrath while she wears it, and, like, has a full fantasy going from, like, kissing him to him lifting her dress up, and, like, she snaps out of it and is like, shit. Okay, I just need to pick some clothes, put it on, and be fine. So she chooses a dress that is like closer to one that she would have worn at home. And it makes her think of back home, and she thinks of how homesick she is, but she pushes it away because she needs to like jump into her new role, basically. She walks in the bathroom and there's like a bunch of perfume there, which reminds her of Victoria because she used to like dabble in scents and perfumes. And she puts some on and like deciphers the flavors because like that's what Victoria would do. And there's some fresh flowers there, and they're like covered in ice, which is interesting. And she wonders if they're like from Pride or if they're from Wrath. And she's like, why are they even here? And you're like, obviously they're from Wrath.
Yeah, like if Wrath can't even go into the territory of Pride without like letting him know first, there's no way Pride can send her flowers.
Yeah. There's also like makeup and hair stuff there, so she puts like blood red flowers in her hair and blood red lipstick on because she's really trying to like own this darker personality of like powerful soon to be queen. And that's how she knows how to do it, I guess. She thinks that this whole like room and space is beautiful, and she wonders if it's an apology for taking her soul or respect for the future queen. So she goes to find him to see like what's going on. Okay. So Anir shows up in her room with food and wine, and she asks if his prince sent him to spy, and he says he's a gossip when he's drinking. So she's like, fine, and invites him in. And he has human food, and she asks if Wrath was like lying about not knowing anything about human food, because in the first book he was like, what is this delicious treat you gave me? And she asks him if like the wine is red or if it's demon wine, and he says she'll know it when she has demon wine. So she's just like, fine, and she just drinks the wine. And I'm like, I think I'd ask a few more questions, but okay. She asks him then if he like plans to offer her information for her to spill her own, and he asks why she's so cynical, but she just says she's learned to be now, basically because of Wrath. And she says that she doesn't know what Wrath could want from her, and like now that he's won his freedom and everything, and he asks what she really thinks he won, and she does say like his freedom, and she says, like, he got her soul, and he asks if that's what he said, because, like, I guess we're kind of getting the implication that, like, that's not what Wrath said was happening. Like, he didn't say he needed her soul to be free.
What did he say?
I don't remember.
Oh. Did he say he needs her?
No. So, I don't remember fully what the situation was, but she's like, Envy is the one that accused him of needing a soul to be free, and he was trying to take hers in the last book, and that's what Envy said. Right. And she says like he didn't deny it, so she's like, clearly that's true then. And Anir says that he lives by actions, not words. And she's like, well, his action was to give her the contract with Pride, so, like, that's the same thing. And we're like, obviously there's more actions to him than that. Like, he saved you when he said that he wouldn't. Like, you know, just use your brain a bit.
But can I just say that I find this trope bothersome. And, like, I feel like I've read it before in other things as well. Of like people being like, oh yeah, I go by actions and not words, and then like just don't defend themselves. Like, to me that's stupid. Like, if somebody is blatantly saying something that is wrong about you, then like speak up.
Yeah, it's the stupidest form of miscommunication trope.
Like, oh, I'm not going to because I believe that I do enough I say enough with what I do.
Yeah. Ugh. And I don't know if he's saying that, like, if he's actually saying that Wrath believes that, or if he's just like, because we get, not to jump ahead this week, but we get that he wasn't allowed to talk about something. She kind of realizes that he wasn't allowed to tell her something, and we still don't know what that something was. So, like, it could be something related to this. So, like, there's clearly some constraints here. So maybe that's what he means. But yeah, I do get what you're saying. So yeah, she then asks Anir how Pride's consort died. And he's just like, you need to learn to be much subtler if you want to get information here. Which is just kind of funny. And he says if she's going to ask for something, she needs to be willing to pay a price. And she kind of tells him, like, she just says that she's overwhelmed here. Like, she's a human and she's not used to all this shit. And then he kind of gives her some advice then. He says she needs to play into the prince's egos/sins and gain their trust. And she needs to be ready to bargain with secrets and make sure she defines terms before she agrees to any bargain. So you're like,
this guy is giving her...
Well, he kind of says, like, he understands because he was human once. Like, he also empathizes a little bit, I guess. And he gives her some more information. He tells her that, like, all of this spans decades and goes beyond her isle, but she can start there to, like, narrow down her list. So figure out who is most beneficial to her. And she says she just wants to avoid being like the other, and I think she says brides, but I don't know if that's true, the other bride, and die. And she wants to protect her, like, humans from demons, and she wants to protect her family. But she thinks to herself that, like, she also wants vengeance. So that's only partially true. She also wants vengeance for Victoria.
I just find it, like, I know they're saying, you can't remember if she said bride or brides, but, like,
yeah,
if it's brides, I assume it's, like, the other, like, all the witches that were killed in Italy, right?
Yeah.
Because there were multiple women that were murdered before and after Vittoria, right?
So. Smart, yes. And they had all agreed to become the bride. Yes. So that would make sense, because I'm pretty sure it was brides, and they are all dead, so yeah. So she knows that she needs to talk to Bride. She knows she needs to speak to Pride, and she thinks Envy wasn't helpful before. So she, like, asks Anir then why he's living in the House of Wrath, because she wants some more information on Wrath. And he says that after his parents were murdered, he was angry, so the house kind of fit him. And she asks how long he's been here, and he just says a while, because time works differently here than it does in the human world, so he doesn't really know. He then asks what she did to Wrath, because he apparently went down and, like, brought down a mountain after their argument. And they've since gotten letters from, like, the houses of Lust and Gluttony, thinking that it's, like, the end of days and war is coming. And she's just annoyed because she's like, you can't blame women for what men do. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not my fault for his actions. And, like, it's the same as the first book where there's so many feminist quotes that are like,
yeah. It's like, yes, them. Queen.
Exactly. But Anir kind of says he doesn't think he was angry or prideful. And he says he's never escorted anyone into the City of Ice, which is what they call the House of Wrath. And apparently, this is kind of where we get the more powerful the house, the colder the circle. So, I don't know what that tells us. It was snow outside.
So because there's snow outside, we're saying that he's decently powerful, I guess. Good old Wrath.
Yeah. Yeah, Anir basically says, like, when she signed the contract, it was all done, and he should have actually just left her in the Sin Corridor to make her way herself. Which, obviously, she would have died. Anir then tells her that he's on the 7th floor balcony if she wants to fight some more, and that she's good for him, because she gets under his skin. So she kind of debates it, but she sees something on her bed then, and, like, feels fear. And she goes over, and it's just a human skull lying on her bed. And I'm like, yeah, I'd be fucking terrified too. That is weird. And the skull speaks to her, and it says, in Latin, the first part, but it says, the angel of death lives, fury, almost free, maiden, mother, and crone, past, present, and future. And the voice kind of sounds like Vittoria's, which is also terrifying, sad, emotion bringing. But it's interesting. We're like, is it actually her? Like, what does that mean? So, but she knows it isn't like, it's not necromancy, but it's a dark spell on human remains. So she wonders if it's like demon magic. So she wonders if it's demon magic and if it's a prince of hell. And she decides to like pick apart the message. And she thinks like, Claudia also mentioned the angel of death. And at that time, wrath, envy, greed, and lust were like in town. And she thinks then one of them has to be who they were referring to. And she remembers calling Wrath the angel of death and him being pissed about it. So she's like, it's him. Check. I've figured out that the angel of death lives is about him and fury is about him because he is fury. He's wrath.
Furious.
Yeah. And then she says like, well, she thinks like maybe he wasn't actually chosen to solve the murders, but was furious that someone like sullied his title. And I'm like, this is a jump, and I don't get it. And she thinks, like, maybe the devil was punishing Wrath for disobedience. So, I don't really understand what she's talking about there, but I was just like, I'll leave it, because she's got a lot of theories. Then she goes to Maiden, Mother, Crone. And she thinks, like, in witch mythology, they're like the three goddesses who rule heaven, earth, and the underworld. And the goddess of heavens was La Prima Striga, who was the mother of the one that the bride, I guess the original bride that married Pride. So, like, that is like a connection, but she doesn't really know how it fits in. But she knows it means something. So she uses a scarf to pick up the skull and hides it in her wardrobe. And she goes out to search around the house to try to figure anything out. She ends up like going down like 12 floors or something. And she sees a lake outside and a branch falls in it and just like lights on fire. I'm like, interesting.
Yikes.
She's like, make a mental note not to jump in there. And I'm like, that's smart. And then she, of course, finds 2 double doors, and, like, the doors have, like, vines and flowers and skulls on it, and it's, like, all the same kind of style as her tattoo and, like, all of this stuff.
Connected.
So she opens the door. Yeah. So she opens the door, and it's a beautiful, giant library.
Why is there always a giant-ass library? That the main characters... Like, I'm not gonna lie. I would love one, too. But, like, there's always, without fail, a giant-ass library that the heroine always finds herself, like, in. And, like, oh, I love it so much.
Yeah. And it's because they're doing it for us, I guess. But the books are all arranged by color. And I find that interesting. I'm just like, did he rebind books so that they'd be the same color? Because, like, you got to put them in series. But okay. And then Wrath pops up behind her and startles her and says that this is Haven because it's close to heaven, but not boring. And then he tells her his personal library is 1 level down. And she asks if it's hell. And, like, that is what he's called it because, you know, the whole heaven, hell, Haven thing. And he says there's lots of fire, chains, and torture devices, and when she's brave enough, he'll show her. And she's just like, ugh. He tells her then that envy, lust, and greed have all invited her to their Feast of the Wolves, which we get from her is like, what she knows of it is it's a human holiday where they like sacrifice goats and anoint the wealthy, and it's just like a ritual, I guess, in the human world. And he then continues and says he thinks that sloth and gluttony will also ask her to theirs. And she asks if he's going to be hosting a feast. And he says he's waiting to see what Pride does, because apparently they all normally go to one of the prince's houses. Like, all of the princes go to one prince's house. And, which is just interesting. And it's like a 3-day
thing.
Celebration. The location is usually decided by where the guest of honor will go and the highest rank that wants to host. And she's just surprised because she thought that they'd all be of equal rank, which, why would you think that? Like, we're saying that Pride is above everyone else. Why would you think that the rest aren't?
I mean, I sort of was on her train of thought too. I was like, yeah, one of them is above because he's the king or the, the devil or whatever, and everybody else is then equal. Because, like, how do you rank sins? They all have their own,
bad thing. Yeah. I guess. I guess if we're thinking about the levels of hell, it seemed
I guess.
Like more, I guess, in Dante's sense, it's like they get worse, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, that makes sense too. But so he basically then says that the guest of honor always chooses like the highest ranking prince as the one that they'll have the party at. And she's like, could they choose another? And he's like, nope, they always choose the highest. And she kind of realizes that like all of this information is an apology for earlier. And she's like, okay. She asks then why they celebrate a pre-Roman tradition. And he says that, like, well, they took it from them. It's their ritual first. And she asks why he's telling her and if she should be worried he'll turn into a wolf and pant at her door. And he says that there's going to be no panting unless she asks nicely. And I'm like, yes, please ask nicely. Yeah. I want that. But he also tells her... but he also tells her that she's actually nominated to be the guest of honor. And she's just like, what? So she asks if she's going to be forced to kill the goat. And I'm like, it's going to be something worse, guy. And he's like, no, there is no goat. And she asks if she's going to be the sacrifice. And he says no, but her biggest fear or the secret of her heart will be wrenched from her. And like, that is the sacrifice. And it's going to happen in front of every prince of hell and their subjects. And like, fear is power here. So if they get her fear, she'd be better off sacrificing her life than like giving up what her fear is and then being tormented by it for the rest of time, I guess. By every single person that exists in hell, in the underworld at all. Like, anyway. She's like, well, then I don't want to be the guest of honor. Yeah. And he's like, well, you don't have a choice. And she says, you told me I'd always have a choice. And he says, he didn't realize, right? The bar is on the floor.
Yeah, that's true.
But it is sweet, but it's also like, oh God, we're realizing that the bar is on the floor. But he says he didn't realize she remembered that conversation. And she asks, like, she says they kind of need to discuss it. They need to discuss the cave. And he asks her to explain her decision to, I guess, accept marrying Pride. But she doesn't believe she had a choice. But she sees he's, like, visibly pissed. And she realizes now that he wanted her to refuse Pride. And she tells him that he should have confided in her. And they could have come up with a new plan. And she demands to know why he wanted her to refuse, but he tells her to stop pushing. And she kind of realizes in this moment that, like, he wasn't allowed to interfere, so he couldn't really say anything. But we still don't know why.
I also don't like that. How did she realize that he couldn't interfere? Like, girl.
She jumps so many leaps and bounds in this book, too. It seems like so far. Like, she just jumps to conclusions, and I'm like, I don't know if these are right. Can we step back? So she asks him then if he's also cursed. And he says that she should have asked her mortal family and they had selective gaps in their storytelling. And she starts to get, like, pissed about that, because obviously she doesn't want to hear anything about her family. But he just disappears before they can have another fight again. So we're like, there is something she doesn't know, and we are missing a lot of information here. But she kind of thinks about it, and she realizes that her Nona didn't tell her much. And she didn't really help her learn much magic. So she kind of wonders what else she doesn't know about the curse. And she thinks, like, her Nona warned them about demons, but not much, like, about, like, she didn't tell them anything about their abilities. And she wonders why. She thinks back to, in the first book we got, that she did a truth spell on Antonio, and she says she didn't need to learn it, she just knew it, which is not the same with other spells. Like, she could learn a spell and it would take her ages to actually be able to do it, like the ones her Nona taught her, but she instinctively knew this spell that her Nona got mad at her for using. So, like, that's interesting.
Yeah, why does she have, like, why does she have knowledge, like, of spells that she's not supposed to know? Or use, I guess.
Yeah, because they're bad, according to her Nona. She then wonders what Vittoria didn't tell her, and something deep in her memory stirs, and she kind of wonders if, like, the devil wasn't cursed at all, and the witch murders had nothing to do with finding a bride. And that makes her think, like, if that's the case, then Vittoria or one of the 7 princes are lying. So, like, I'm assuming she's remembering something that she's, like, not fully remembering. Because, like, you wouldn't just jump to this conclusion. Yeah. So she finds a grimoire in the library, and it's, like, a beginner's one. And she kind of learns some things that she didn't know, which are, like, basic, that she should have probably been taught. But basically, this grimoire, I guess they're all different, and maybe, like, they might all have different ideas of things. I don't really know.
Well, I feel like a personal family grimoire is just, like, almost, I think of it
recipe
as,
book.
Like, yeah, no, seriously, that's what I was gonna say. In my head, a family grimoire is a recipe book, but instead of recipes, it's just your family spells. Mm-hmm. So, like, I don't think there would be any, like, lessons in it, I guess. Right? The same way, like, a cookbook you buy at the store, they're gonna have, like, I don't know if you've looked at cookbooks recently, but, like, if you're annoyed about, like, when you go online and you get a recipe, and there's, like, this whole, like, spiel, and you gotta scroll before you find the recipe.
Yeah.
That's what I think of. I think that, like, this grimoire that she found is like that. Like, it's got all this, like,
preamble
stuff before it gets into the good stuff. Whereas, like, your family recipe book's not gonna have any of that shit.
It barely even has the fucking recipes in it.
Yeah, it barely has measurements.
Yeah.
Like, you're lucky if your grandmother wrote, like, just flour.
Yeah.
I tried to ask my Nan once before her, like, for her bread dough. I'm like, Nan, I need your recipe. And she's like, I don't know. I used half a bag of flour and then I had some water and some yeast. And I'm like, that's it?
That's not a recipe.
Like, yeah. And, like, another time I wanted her to, I wanted to make dumplings at home. And I don't mean, like, gyoza or, like, those kind of dumplings. I mean,
pea
like,
soup?
Yeah, like, soup. No, because when I say soup dumplings, it's still, like,
yeah, I mean,
Asian.
Pea soup dumplings. Newfoundland pea soup has bread dough that bobs in it.
Yes, it's like a bread dough that cooks in the soup. It cooks in the soup. And it's like, it gets soggy, but cooked at the same time. And, like, I don't know why we like it so much, because it does not sound good.
No.
But they're so good. And it also thickens your soup.
Yeah.
So, like, there's no need to add, like, a lot of thickener. Anyway, for those of you that don't know what pea soup is, it's split pea soup. So, like, almost like it's just lentil soup.
Yeah. But there's, like, ham in it, too.
Yeah.
But.
So, But anyway, so some people put these like bread, it's like bread balls, but it's not bread dough.
No.
It has its own, like, similar ingredients, but it has its own
ratios
to it. So I was trying to make that at home once with my husband, and I called my Nan. I was like, Nan, how do I do this? And she was like, you just gotta add some flour and add some water until it looks like this. And anyway, it turned out awfully. It was really bad. And I am not a bad cook.
No.
But that was really bad.
Yeah, because that's not instructions.
No, like, they didn't cook.
Yeah.
They were just doughy globs, and we couldn't eat them. So, it was a fun experience that I've never done it again.
No. There's got to be, like, a Newfoundland cookbook that has a recipe in it somewhere.
Yeah, but it's not the same as your Nan's.
No.
Like, but is anything going to be the same as your Nan's, I guess?
No, you got to go make it with her.
Yeah. And I mean, I've made bread with her and stuff before, but, like, she just literally, she's so used to making, like 10 or 15 loaves of bread at once. Right? Because she would take it and freeze it and use it for her ginormous family of 9.
Yeah.
That, like, she would be, like, dumping out a whole bag of flour, like, to make bread. And I'm like, I just want one loaf. How do I make one loaf of bread? And Nan's like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't know?
No.
Anyway. That was enough of a tangent, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I just wonder if there's different theories or if this is, like, the correct theory.
Right. I didn't think of that. I wouldn't assume there's a bunch of different theories around magic, but I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, because it's like, if this is also just a random grimoire, is it just like somebody was like, I believe this, but obviously no idea. Anyway, so she learns that magic is a muscle that needs exercising to get better. And the source is what they call, like, the well of magic inside of a person. So it's your source.
Yeah, it's, that's everywhere in fantasy books.
Yeah. So...
where's my well?
Exactly. So I guess that really rings with her because she's like, I didn't realize there was, like, a well of magic in me. I've never noticed that. So that's probably important. And then it says, the wise spinners of fate say magic comes from the goddesses. So based on which element of magic a family can do, then that shows, like, who you should pray to of the goddesses. Which is news to her because her Nona taught them to pray to all of the goddesses. And there's also the 4 regular elements plus ether, which this book says is the rarest, but maybe not in this context. And I was like, what does that even mean?
Okay.
So I don't know.
So
maybe the person who owns the book has
literally
ether.
says not in this context?
I think so.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I was like, what is the context? So I wonder if maybe the person who wrote the book maybe has ether as their element, and they're saying that's why it's not rare. But anyway. So yeah, that's kind of news. So she looks up if she can see anything about the Spinners of Fate in the book because she'd never heard of them before, but there's nothing. So then she tries to look for information on source. She's kind of getting overwhelmed, and then she just decides, like, to try to sense it in herself. So she's, like, kind of like meditating, but, like, tunneling into herself, and she's drawn into darkness, and she tunnels down, and she sees that her magic is, like, a slumbering, ancient, and powerful, mad thing. And it opens an eye, and she, like, jets out of there, because she's like, what the hell is that? So she looks through the grimoire to hear about, I guess, all the elements.
Mm-hmm.
And the magic that she sensed inside of her doesn't really feel like how this book describes the elements. So obviously earth, air, fire, water, and this ether.
So she can't feel any of them?
No, she just says that, like, what she saw doesn't seem like any of them. Because it just was, like, a rage-filled monster in her.
Lovely.
Yeah. So she does think, though, that with the rage power inside of her, she could, like, destroy this realm. And I'm like, that's a leap. But while she's kind of having those thoughts, she's interrupted by, I think her name is said Forna? Not sure.
Okay.
Who recognizes her. And Emilia asks her, like, what the gossip is. And she jokes about it, but then she says, actually, there's no gossip about you. Wrath has threatened everyone not to talk about you, basically.
So wait, has she met her before?
No, everyone just knows who she is. She's the new thing here.
So Emilia just says, hey, what's all the gossip, as if she knows her?
She's like, what's all the gossip about me? Because this girl comes up and is like, hey, you must be Emilia. And she's like, what have you heard about me, kind of thing.
Oh, okay. It just seems very, like, friendly and colloquial for...
Just meeting?
Yeah, for Emilia especially. Like, she doesn't seem like...
She wants to trust anybody.
Well, yeah, and she doesn't seem like she's overly friendly at this moment in time.
Yeah.
So, like...
No, she's also just trying to get some information, and I guess she's taking what Amir said to heart of, like...
Right, be a bit more subtle.
Yeah.
Don't just ask people shit outright.
Don't ask how the bride died.
He never did tell her that, did he?
No.
Oh, he's sneaky.
Yeah. We do actually get a bit of, I guess, gossip, but there was a Lord Macedon, who Wrath threatened to cut his tongue out, and he also dropped a mountain on Demetius. So we heard that he exploded a mountain, but it's actually that he, like, killed somebody with it. They're still looking for the body, so they're not sure.
Love it.
But this Demetius person was like a general and, like, pretty high up or something. But he suggested serving her still beating heart to the soldiers. So Wrath threw a mountain on him.
I love it.
Yep.
And she thinks that he only did it for himself.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, and also, she's not the one that...
being naive.
Yeah, she's not the one that pissed him off to do that. It was this guy's fault, so... You know. And then apparently other people are saying that he actually commented on tasting her to see if she's as sweet as her ripe bosoms suggest. And I was like, bleh.
Bosoms, I hate that word.
I just hate men.
Yeah. I know.
And then I guess he had already threatened to cut out people's tongues, and Lord Macedon asked if there were any other rules about Emilia and her tongue.
What a dummy. Right?
Anyway, he didn't cut his tongue out, but he was like, next time, it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Forna kind of implies that, like, these two men kind of had it coming and would act on those words as well. So they seem like shitty people.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to justify Wrath, like, defending her honor, because these two guys, if he hadn't done it, then they would have gone after her and raped her. Like,
yeah, you're right.
That's what it's like. You know what I mean? It's
it
like
is.
They're like,
Yeah.
Like, he killed people. He was a murderer and a torturer. But these guys were assholes.
Yeah. I kind of hate that. We've talked about it a few books because, like, we have... yeah.
If in real life, if somebody came up to you and was like, that guy was, like, making explicit sexual remarks about you, so I murdered him. You would be like, police!
Yeah.
Help me! Like, you know. But
zoom,
for some
zoom,
reason, yeah, when it's in books, you're like, oh, he killed someone for her. He loves her.
Yeah, this one I don't even, like, I'm just like, oh, it wasn't her fault about the mountain. I'm like, he did it because, but I'm like, I don't need them to be bad. I don't need them to have said anything sexual. Like, him saying we should kill her, that's fine. Yeah. You know, I get killing him, but, like, they always have to, this is happening in a bunch of books. Take it to the
sexual lever.
Yeah, to make us hate them, which I don't really love, because I'm like, he's a prince of hell.
Yes.
And we're supposed to think he's never done anything morally bad, ever?
That's true.
Like, I don't know. I'd be fine if he just did something because he wanted to. But yeah, I didn't even think about it until you mentioned it, that it's like, it's always the threat of rape that is like what is thrown around to make us as readers, mostly female readers, who are mostly terrified of rape and being murdered. Yeah.
Unless that's your kink, and we won't yuck your yum.
No, but generally it's still like, it's consent, non-consent.
It's non-consensual versus consensual non-consent.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my god. So, it's funny because I actually just started reading Haunting Adeline.
Oh yeah.
So like, the whole consent thing
is iffy.
It is not iffy.
No, it's not iffy.
It's very not consent.
Yes.
However, her body betrays her.
Cool.
So many times.
Yeah, no. That one is very... There are trigger warnings, and if you should read them. Because it gets...
I've... Yeah. We can talk about it after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So... Jesus. Emilia.
He killed the guy.
Yeah, so yeah, he killed one guy and he threatened others. So Emilia decides that she needs to ask Wrath for a weapon, and she thinks like she's been in restaurants her entire life in kitchens, so
yeah,
she knows how to use knives. She just needs one, basically. Yeah. So she asks if either of those was Forna's lover, and I'm like, where did this come from? This is like, I guess. But she says that Emilia will meet them tomorrow night at dinner, where the most elite house of Wrath members are coming to dinner, and I guess Emilia's going, even though she hadn't heard about it before now.
So did she not answer her either?
She just said she'll meet them tomorrow night.
Meet who? Her lovers?
Yeah, her lover.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Forna says, like, it'll be practice for the upcoming feast. And that gets Emilia to ask her if someone could take the place of the guest of honor. And Forna says, like, even if someone was allowed to, nobody would. Because, like, obviously, the princes choose who the guest of honor is. And it's, like, voted on and shit. So, like, it would be bad to not accept the honor. Hence the name. And Forna also says, definitely not a prince. It would give the others too much power over them. So it seems ridiculous that we're asking the soon-to-be queen to do this.
To do this, yeah.
We're giving others power over her. Forna then says she'll meet her tomorrow for dinner. And then just leaves.
Here's my question. Do we think that Wrath has told all the other princes that Emilia has signed the contract and is the future queen?
I don't know. Because that would make a difference too, yeah.
Right? Like, maybe they're not all aware of who she is.
Yeah. That's a good point. Interesting. So. It just makes me wonder, who do they think she is that she would be a guest of honor?
It's a good point.
But yeah, I don't know.
I mean, maybe it's just the fact that she's a mortal witch in the underworld. Like,
yeah. Like, yeah. Could be.
Could be. I don't know.
So yeah, she sits and thinks for a bit, and she thinks, like, if she can figure out her power and she can solve the murder, she could be gone before the feast and not have to worry about her biggest fear. And we're like, of course you're going to have to do the feast. We're not idiots here. So she decides to check out the Hell Library, which is downstairs. So she goes down, and the shelves are all obsidian, and the books are all dark leather bound. So it's like the opposite of the Rainbow Library above.
Which I love.
I know.
Like, I know we talked earlier about, why does there always have to be a library?
Yeah.
This sounds amazing.
I love both. I want to go to both. One for daytime, one for nighttime.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, can you imagine how fun and spooky it would be in the hell one?
Yes. And
Ugh.
I love it. I want to go there. And she says it's like super cozy, but there are manacles and chains around.
Woo!
And I'm like, I don't know if this is supposed to be sexy, but I find it sexy.
Yeah, like, are the manacles just for the books, or can they be for the people too?
Yeah. Is it for like they torture people on the side while they're just reading in the library, or is it for sexy times?
Is it bad that like you're like, oh, torture people and read a book, and I'm just like, ooh,
sex.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So she looks through the books, and there's nothing unsurprising for like Wrath. You know, he's a war guy, so there's war history, all that bullshit. But behind the desk that's there are 7 journals, one on each of the other houses, and then there's one journal missing. So that implies that either she thinks that one of the houses has enough information that there's 2 journals on it, or there's like another journal on somebody else. We don't know. So she takes out the one on House Pride, and she opens it, but she can't read it. And she's like, God damn it. Of course it won't be that easy. Because the spines had it in Latin, but on the inside is like a demon language. And she's like, fuck's sake. So, at this part, I was like, why does she keep doing this? But, so it's Rath's desk, and there's like a lavender liquid on his desk. So she pours some into a cup and drinks it. And I'm like, why do you keep drinking shit that you don't know what it is? You can't just drink something lavender in somebody's office. He's a demon. You're gonna die. Anyway, she says it burns like brandy. Is it all fine? Everything's fine. All fine? Yeah, burns like brandy. And she says she's gonna send for a glass before the meal tomorrow to settle her nerves. Like, okay, I guess you don't care if he finds out you're here? Like,
I mean, I also am not crazy about, I'll send for a glass. You know where it is, bitch. Go get it yourself.
Well, yeah. So she then like checks his desk, and the drawers are all locked. So there's like one note on the table underneath a paperweight. So she reads the note, and it says, "Brother, they have found 8," and the 8 is Roman numerals, and then G. So she thinks it's from G. Mm-hmm. She ends up.
I wonder who that's from.
Yeah, she picks up the paperweight. And she realizes that it's actually a seal. So she wonders if the message is to Wrath, from Wrath, or intercepted by him. Because, like, there's no date on it, so she doesn't know what it is. Like, there's just so many questions about it. Because it, I guess, doesn't have a seal on it anymore.
Yeah.
She thinks maybe the 8 could be something to do with the date. Or the 8 could be something to do with the 8th journal that is missing. But she's like, I think I'm just thinking too much about what's in this area. She steals some ink, a pen, and parchment, and she takes the grimoire that she was reading, and she goes to her room. She knows tomorrow's going to be, like, good practice for, like, learning and helping her invade House of Pride when she has to. And she thinks when the demon responsible for Vittoria's death is found, they will feel her fury, and she will burn his house of sin to ash. And that is where we end this week.
I love it.
Yeah. She's bloodthirsty.
Yeah. A lot of questions. How does she know there were 8 journals again if there were only 7 present?
Dust.
Really?
I don't know. Or there's space.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Oh, that's bothersome.
Yeah. She's making a lot of leaps, but I also, like, I don't know what I would do differently in this situation. Because, like, you're going to come up with crazy theories. But I think in books, like, authors don't want to throw out too many theories like you would come up with in your own head. Because then you'll be like, what the fuck? There was nothing about this. And then you're like, oh, well, it's an unreliable narrator and she's not as smart. I don't know. But yeah, that wraps it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com or on Instagram or Facebook at coffeeandcoread, and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week we will be reading chapters 8 to 15 of Kingdom of the Cursed. So make sure to follow along, and if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.